Hey, I'm Stan Gibson, and this is the Inspiration Podcast. Let's get to it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Inspiration Podcast with Stan. Hey, I'm your host, and this is season 2, my friends. I am so excited. So each episode, if you've been following me, you know I talk about positive psychology, sitting down with leaders who aren't afraid to pull back the curtain on their journey. We explore the self-doubt that they've battled, the resilience they've built, and how they found the courage to lead authentically in a world that pushes for conformity. Hey, grab your favorite drink, get comfortable. Let's jump in and let's get this conversation started with my good friend, Cam F. Awesome. Cam, great to have you on today, my friend.
My man Stan, what it do?
Oh, this is going to be a blast. You know, I don't do bios very well, but I do want to kind of shout out a few nuggets about you because I want the listeners to kind of know who you are. And you and I have talked a time or two. And for those of you that made it through season 1, you know I had a lot of great guests. In fact, I don't know why I just migrated towards some really good sports figures. I had Fred Wakefield, who was a 8-year NFL veteran. I had Carly Patterson, who was a gold medalist and silver medalist in the 2004 Olympics. And today you're going to love this episode because Cam comes to us not only as an inspirational keynote speaker, he's a diversity and inclusion consultant, he's a stand-up comedian, which we're going to get into in a little bit as well. But he is a 12-time national champion heavyweight Olympic boxer. He's the former captain of the U.S. national boxing team, the number 1 ranked heavyweight boxer in the country during his career. And I had read that he is the greatest fighter to never go pro. I've got to ask him if that's a true statement or not. He has a passion and an advocate for, and I love this because I want to get into this, for plant-based living. And he's been on this journey since 2012. He's a regular MC at Veg Fest, which, sounds like a pretty cool thing, quite honestly. This is nationwide, and, he just brings so much energy, so much humor. You're going to find that in this conversation today. And he also does a nationwide back-to-school speaking tour and travels the country in his self-converted van, living down by the river, just like our man Chris Farley. So I'll tell you what, with no further ado, Cam, did I screw up any of that bio? I mean, where do we go from here? You've got a lot to talk about, my friend.
That's all sounds cool, man. I feel like I've done some cool stuff.
You've done some cool stuff. We can get started multiple places. Again, I told you I love the storytelling, and we've talked a little bit. But so let's just start at the beginning. In fact, the other night I watched a Netflix documentary on you, and it's called Counterpunch. And they highlighted 3 boxers, and they highlighted you, and that was a great documentary. Why don't we start there? And if you want to go backwards from there a little bit, leading up to the documentary, but tell the audience a little bit about you and your history in the boxing world.
Yeah, I started boxing in high school for dealing bullying and lack of confidence, and I joined the boxing gym to just look like a boxer because I thought if I look like a boxer, I'd be safe. That was my logic. And I thought the harder and faster I worked out, the quicker I would be safe. So I ended up getting in really good shape, ended up developing this very good defensive style in sparring. I would spar everyone in the gym. And I had no intention of becoming a boxer, but I was so good at defense that I realized like at some point I realized like I could become a boxer. And I figured that out by changing my identity to become a boxer.
Yeah. So while, this is about boxing today, it's really not about boxing. It's about mindset because you've got one of the strongest mindsets I've ever heard of. I mean, our conversation I was so jacked up after we talked a few weeks ago. But tell us a little bit. So did this then become a childhood dream and you just kind of grew into the boxing world? And tell us a little bit about, because you really had a style that was very unique. I know that just when you come into the ring, you don't just go through the ropes. You kind of flipped over the ropes. You had this smile on your face, little Muhammad Ali-ism to you. Tell us a little bit about growing up and, kind of getting into the Olympic boxing.
So growing up, I dealt with bullying, and it was pretty bad. In elementary school, I was released 10 minutes early. so I could get home before my bully got to me. And on that walk home, it was embarrassing because I knew why I was walking home. And it was because I was a coward. I was afraid. I couldn't defend myself. And those were like the stories I would constantly tell myself. And then I became that story I told myself. But I started boxing in 11th grade in New York. So a year into boxing, my parents moved from New York to Florida my senior year of high school, which would have been like devastating for a lot of people. But I realized that no one knew me in Florida because in ninth grade, I got beat up by a girl. So in my head, everyone saw me as that guy. But in Florida, no one would know that. And I decided I was just going to pretend to be who I always wanted to be. And Stan, if you could snap your fingers and just like become the person you wanted to be, what are some of those characteristics you would choose?
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of, things that I work on and limiting beliefs, not only with my clients, but my own. But, yeah, it's this confident dude, that just, talks with confidence, walks with confidence, is this person that, you try not to draw attention to yourself, but you certainly don't want to embarrass yourself. You just want to be, you want to be on all the time. And that's kind of who I try to envision myself, from the question you just asked.
Yeah. Uh, so when I started boxing in 11th grade, in school, I was Cameron. But when I went to the boxing gym, I pretend I was nervous to go to the gym. If there are bullies in school, there could only be professional bullies at the boxing gym. So I was very nervous about going. So I introduced myself as Cam. Do you remember Steve Urkel, Family Matters?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So Cameron was Steve. Cam was Stefan.
Ah,
And at the gym, I was this cool, outgoing, athletic guy, but at school, I was this unconfident person. But when I moved to Florida, I got to introduce myself to everyone as Cam, and no one knew any better. So I kind of fill the role of who they expected Cam to be. I was outgoing. I was a little obnoxious. I wasn't shy. I was funny. I was charming. And I didn't believe those things, but the people around me did. The boxing gym was 6 miles away from my high school. And I had this idea that if I could, I understood the hard work of it. And I realized I can outwork most people. And I understood the scoring system with boxing. So I needed to get to the gym. It was a 6 mile walk every day. So every day after school, I took a 3 mile walk to the boxing gym. And this is before iPod. So it was just me and my thoughts. And during those walks, because when I was walking home in elementary school after the bully, I would tell myself I was a loser. I couldn't defend myself. I was weak. But for some reason, walking to the gym every day, I just made up stories about how great I was and how I deserve to win and how I'm the best and how everyone's afraid of me and how I'm confident and I'm always right. And the more highly I spoke about myself on the way to the gym, the better I did when I got there. And the better I did at the gym, the more excited I was for this walk. And in 3 months, I transformed into a completely different person.
so this is something I know that, I work a lot with my clients on called identity transformation. It's exactly what you just said. We move thoughts from the subconscious brain, the limiting beliefs, and we move them to the front of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, the limbic system. And when you move it to the conscious part of the brain with intention, and you repeat it, and it isn't just a name it and claim it. You then have to do the work. I'm sure that while you created this visualization in your mind, you had to get somewhere and do the work to make it all become reality, correct?
Yeah, it was affirmations followed by action because I
Mhm.
was talking all that, but on my way to the gym to work out. And if you walk 3 hours to the gym, you're not going to really half ass it when you get there.
Yeah. Now, did you read about this philosophy or did you just create this on your own?
No, I just listen to a lot of rap music, and all rappers do is talk about how amazing they are all the time. So that's like what was going on in my head. Like when I listen to rap music, I'm the rapper in that. I've got the cars, I've got all the stuff. I'm great. And I took that same type of approach. I don't know why that was just that pattern was already in my brain, probably because we are what we consume.
And so you had this alter ego, this Cam, and yet if people were to look you up on the internet, they would see Lenroy Thompson, correct?
Yeah.
And so eventually you came to a point where you changed your name from Lenroy Thompson to Cam F. Awesome. Maybe give us some of the lead up, the before, the reason that you changed your name legally. Just give us some of that history in there, if you will.
Uh, so I I retired Cameron when I moved to Florida, and I was just Cam full time to everyone there. Everyone but my immediate family knew me as Cam and in Florida, and I became that person, and I became the number one boxer in the country. And at some point, I realized I didn't need to be Cameron anymore. I really like this Cam guy. So I had the opportunity at the age of 19 to move from Florida to Kansas City to pursue boxing. This is where I had already changed my identity to Cam in Florida, but now 2 years later, I got to fine tune it when I moved to Kansas City because literally no family, I had nothing there. So I was completely building myself from scratch. And I introduced myself to everyone as a super disciplined, punctual athlete who's like unstoppable and resilient and the best. And I walk with this air of confidence, which was leaned on arrogance, but it was like the more highly I spoke about myself, the better I did. And I didn't understand it, but I didn't see any benefit to not speaking highly about myself. And I won nationals in 2008, 2 years within being into the sport. And Cameron couldn't make a team in high school. Cam made the national team. Not only did he make the national team, he stepped up to be captain of the national team his first year. That's nothing Cameron would ever do. And I don't think it's fair to put that obligation on Cameron. So I do see the benefit of creating an alter ego to become the person you want to be. I read a book recently, Todd Herman. It's the alter ego effect.
Mhm. Yep.
And what was crazy is I thought I came up with a lot of things on my own. Turns out a lot of it already existed. And his book explained a lot of my life and how I went about doing things.
Yeah.
Oh, oh,
We were talking before we started recording today. I've got it's called the Resilience Lab. I've got a workshop in Los Angeles next week. And this specific one that I'm doing next week is on alter ego. And, I asked you if, possibly you can maybe spare 15 to 30 minutes to talk about the alter ego. Because, even with artificial intelligence, I put all their vital information because I give them Clifton Strength Finders, I give them Enneagram, I give them all kinds of assessments, and then I work with them on these assessments and then put it into artificial intelligence, and we start to figure out who are some of the alter egos that probably align with their personality. And, they can choose to take them, they can choose not to. But the bottom line is, I've got a client who she's this passionate French, just really phenomenal salesperson. And, she became Coco Chanel. And if you don't know who that is, you go back into history and you just see this insanely powerful woman. And that's who she wanted to be. And that, we created that Coco Chanel alter ego. And at times, I'm actually Tony Robbins on stage because I get very passionate on stage. I am all over the place. It's hard to keep a camera on me. But that's the alter ego that I'm kind of, shooting for as well. So I didn't realize, I thought that there was like a later turning point when
oh,
you went
no,
from
no.
Lenroy to Cam.
Yeah. So I became kind of Cam, and I wasn't even mental, but everyone knew me as Cam. I became this boxer. I won nationals in 2008, 9, 10, 11, and I was traveling around the world as captain of the USA national boxing team. And the goal was to go to the Olympics. 2012, I win the Olympic trials, but I get kicked off the Olympic team for not sending in my drug testing paperwork. And it wasn't that I was hiding. I just forgot to send the email. I literally got drug tested that same week in Azerbaijan, the country I went to go fight in. But I didn't tell the drug testing agency in the US, and I was suspended. And I realized at that moment, I built everything as Cam. And then when Cam got suspended and like I didn't have the boxing and I didn't have anything to attach my ego to, I became Cameron again. And that sucks because I didn't do much work on Cameron at all. Like I focused a lot on Cam. I hadn't seen Cameron in like 6 years. And then he was just like there. And it was, I knew I had to return to boxing because I have no other discernible skills. I don't have a degree. I'm like, I'm really good at this thing. I don't even really love boxing is not even my passion. I'm just really good at it. I joined the boxing gym because it was free and it would make me look the same.
Sure.
But I looked at my life and I realized I never wanted to be a boxer. I wanted to host a TV show or be an actor. That was like more of the thing I wanted to do. I just did the boxing thing for safety. And then I took a look at my life and I was like, I did all this as Cam to be accepted, to have friends and tie my identity to. Like before I even told you my name, I would tell you everything I've won because that mattered so much to me. And then I got suspended and I had none of that. And then I had to I realized I had to rebuild myself. And I didn't like Cameron, because Cameron was all the things that that was put on me, I felt like growing up. And I was like, okay, I created this Cam guy, but now I want to be more intentional about it and make it official. So I thought of who I became in the last few years, and I looked at all the attributes that I loved about myself and all the things that benefited me. And I made some up that I hadn't considered at the time. And one of the things is I was resilient. It would be such a I thought about it in 2013 when I was coming back. I was like, what a cool story. I know it'll take a few years, but that I return to boxing and dedicate myself. And then I wrap a bow on it by going to the 2016 Olympics. And I would think about that. I'm like, okay, I'm just writing that story. And on that story, on the way there, sometimes they're going to suck. I'm going to lose some, I'm going to win some. But if I just make it to 2016 and go to the Olympics, it would all be worth it. So I changed my last name. I threw what I call an after birthday party, and we killed off Lenroy Cameron Thompson, and we celebrated the birth of Cam F. Awesome. And I did it on my half birthday so I could celebrate both.
So I'll ask you with a little bit of concern, but where did the F come from?
So here's the thing. I realized when I was returning to boxing that I was no longer going to identify as a boxer, but identify as an entertainer because boxing was taken from me. And I realized as I get older, I can't do that forever. So I wanted to be a TV host or an actor. So I was like, oh, I'm going to identify as an entertainer. When they have a boxing match in a random city, what city are you in?
I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona.
So Scottsdale, Arizona, a boxing match out there. They send the newscasters. The newscasters know nothing about boxing, but they have to interview a few of them.
Right.
They want to know what the F stands for. There isn't a time I haven't been interviewed. I'm trying to brand myself as more than just an athlete at this point. And I hope athletes can understand that we need to build ourselves as more than just our sport. Because eventually our sport runs out. Let's say you're a wrestler after college. What do? You're a cheerleader after college. What do? Maybe you don't want to turn pro. Maybe you're not that high level of an athlete and that's where the road stops for you. But your time as an athlete wasn't wasted. You can use whatever you learned and whatever you have as an athlete, you can use that to build a future for tomorrow. And that was my vision in 2012 when I put the F in my name. Also, that F symbolizes who I am. It's the fact that I took the long road in life. Like my peers, I saw everyone going to community college. I could have done that, but I bet on myself. And sometimes it really worked. Sometimes it didn't. And that F, I put in my name as a way to be true to me. And who would 12-year-old Cam want to be? He'd want the F in his name.
This is powerful. This is, I mean, you're talking about everything that I read about and I aspire to and I teach and I coach and I think you're like a living example. So this is like getting goosebumps here.
Oh,
y-
I
y-
would like to add a disclaimer
yeah,
to that though.
yeah,
I'm a speaker. There are opportunities that I lose because there's the F in my name.
really,
With being yourself comes consequences.
really.
Yeah.
Okay, so people are assuming the F means something and they're making that
Oh, they wouldn't be wrong. Then it's just an F on the birth certificate, but it's up for assumption.
that's that's a good way of putting it. You know, so you get this great way of number one, you walk, is it well, you walk 6 miles to practice and you're visualizing, you're getting this alter ego, you are creating a new identity all the way from ninth grade of, this horrible event of getting beat up by a girl to the point where, I mean, you're the captain of the US Olympic boxing team, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you made a comment that I have heard about failure is a filter, not a finish line. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I had this realization. So when I was boxing, I never went in it as like this amazing athlete, but I saw that TNT, things that take no talent, the naturally gifted boxers weren't doing that. I was like, oh, I'm willing to run, get in shape. I'll win based off of hard work. When I kind of figured out that formula, that was like I lost the question. What was the question there?
Well, it is basically failure is a filter,
Oh,
not a finish line.
yeah. So when I joined boxing, I never thought I was going to be like it was never the plan to be this undefeated boxer. Like I was realistic. I couldn't make a team. But my idea was if boxer A has 100 boxing matches and boxer B has 3 boxing matches and they were to fight, who would you bet on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Boxer A. You
Right.
don't even need to know boxer A's record.
Yeah.
It could be 5 wins and 95 losses, but you would still bet on them because that's how powerful experience is. So my thought process with boxing was failure is a filter. Every time I fight, I learn something, and like you can spar like 100 rounds, and you can learn what you learned 100 rounds within 1 round of a fight. It's a weird thing, but I figured if I just got more fights than everyone else, eventually I would just become dominant, and that's what happened. By the time I had 100 fights, I had more fights than everyone else, and I would win based off of comfortability and experience.
Now, you mentioned to me that you actually searched far and wide for better fighters than you to spar against. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Uh, so no one likes being bested. I get that. And I don't either. But I would consciously look for boxers who were better than me to spar. And my plan was I'm going to have to fight them one day. So I might as well go learn everything I can from them. And I would go and find boxers. And if you were better than me, I would need to know why. What are you doing? And if you go for a 4 mile run, I go for a 5 mile run. If you throw a 6 punch combination, I throw a 7 punch combination. I have nothing against you. I want to be better than you and I want to learn from you. Also, I have nothing against you. I want you to be the best you can because the better you are, the better I can be. Uh, and that meant some days you leave the gym not feeling like you killed it. Like some days you don't leave sparring on top. Some days you some days it don't work out that well. And those are the days you go back to the drawing board and you learn from. But I would much rather be embarrassed in the gym than get embarrassed under the lights.
Wow. So, kind of staying on that topic of failure for a little bit, I want to promote your book real quick, Becoming Awesome: How to Make Success Inevitable. But you talk about that in your book, why it's vital to chase after failure rather than avoiding it is one of the points. Talk to me a little bit about that. And you also mentioned why humility may not be all it's cracked up to be. Can you hit on those topics?
Yeah, they actually go hand in hand. Uh, isn't it funny that we are usually as successful as we expect to be? We all know an entitled person who it seems like they get everything they want and they want everything. And our problem with it is that they think they deserve it, and they do deserve it because they think they do. When we set goals, we often set goals to what we think we deserve. And we put such ceilings on ourselves. Like even the financial threshold of $100,000. That is so many people's goal, and they see it as such a big goal that it's almost impossible to get. My thought process is if $100,000 is actually hard to get, change your goal to $1,000,000. Do the necessary steps, because if your goal is $100,000, you're going to get to about 65K and you're going to run into some difficulties. But if you set your goal for $1,000,000 and you actually take the steps it takes to get to $1,000,000, you're going to fail at about 600,000, which is 6 times more your original goal of success. So I took that philosophy when I joined boxing. I was like, cool, my goal is the Olympics. I just set the furthest goal. I was like, cool, let's see what I get on the way there. I thought I'd go to the Olympics. That was, although I had never made a team, but my brain just thinks set the biggest goal possible. And although I qualified for the 2008 Olympic trials, I lost. I won the 2012 Olympic trials. I won the 2016 Olympic trials and the 2020 Olympic trials. So I've won 3 Olympic trials, but I've never actually gone to the Olympics. But I did retire with 12 national championships and more wins than anybody else. I traveled to over 30 countries representing Team USA, and I was captain. So to me, my goal, I didn't really fail at it. What I think the failure would have been is if I would have set my goal for a state championship and accomplished it. Because I won states. I can't even tell you how many state championships I won. I got to the point where I would show up and no one would fight me and I just win automatically. And that's because I set my goal for the Olympics. But if I set my goal for state championships, I would be competing with those people.
So the paperwork was one thing that kept you out of the Olympics. So what were the other? Sounds like you still were at the top. And in fact, in Counterpunch, the Netflix documentary, I know that you went from this heavyweight, which you were definitely a heavyweight. And if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, you'll see that Cam is no heavyweight. Cam is fit, lean, mean. He. In fact, you changed fighting to a welterweight, I think, later on. Did you not?
I went from super heavyweight down to heavyweight. So I dropped about 40, 50 pounds.
40 or 50 pounds?
Yeah. I lost a bet during my suspension, and I was drinking a lot. When I said Cameron, we didn't do a lot of work on him. He was a mess. And I was drinking a lot. I lost the bet, and I had to be vegan for 28 days. And the diet entails sobriety, which meant, and I didn't realize when I lost the bet, I couldn't drink for 28 days, which big fan of that, especially at the time. But being sober for those 28 days allowed me to think a little more clearly about my goals and the things I want and what I believe I deserve. One of the comments I would see on social media, because I read all the comments, I had time. One of them was pointed at the fact that I used to be very confident. When I said I would lean on the side of arrogance, bro, I knew I was going to win nationals. I would show up and I would tell everyone I was going to win. And when someone pulled me, I'm like, oh, that's unlucky for you. I would dance in the ring. I wore capes. To me, it was fun. It was so fun because I knew I was going to win. And if you ever were asked the question, if you knew you were going to win, would you act any differently? Yes, I did. And I had so much fun with it. I wore skirts in the ring because I thought it'd be funny to beat a grown man up in a pink skirt. And after I got suspended, one of the comments, or a lot of the comments, was, I bet he's humble now. And that hit me in my chest in a different way. Because, I never thought of it like that. And I realized when I was walking to the gym every day in high school, I wasn't humble at all. I was telling myself how amazing I was and how I won everything and how I deserve everything. And I don't think success is a zero-sum game. I don't think me saying that about myself hurts anyone else. But I followed the actions of what I spoke. But after I got suspended for a paperwork issue, not even like anything real, I wasn't very kind to myself. During my suspension, I was like, "Oh, you idiot, you loser, you fool. How can you get yourself in the situation?" It's embarrassing, bro. I had to sit with that for a year. And I realized like Cameron came back and he was drinking a lot. And I realized I wanted to be more intentional with who I am and how I see the world. And I wanted, because I realized when I was walking home from school early in elementary school, I wrote a script for myself. I'm a loser, I'm a coward, I'm afraid, and I did really well at avoiding confrontation. Then when I was walking to the gym in high school, I would tell myself I was amazing and I rewrote the story. And I realized I had the power to rewrite my own story. In 2012, I could rewrite my own story, but it would suck. Like, there's going to be a grace period of suck where I'm just going to be going to the gym basically, and I'll be working out and seeing no difference in my body, but I'll be sore. And that analogy can go for whatever it is you decide to do in life. That beginning part, you're not going to see a lot of progress. But like I allowed myself to go through that because I was like, okay, I'm writing the story. But if I got to choose what traits I wanted back in high school when I asked you, Stan, like what characteristics would you choose? If you got to do it on an actual scale, and I got to do that. And when I changed my name legally to Mr. Awesome, which is the superhero I become when I go in the ring. When I changed my name legally, I am now reintroducing myself to everyone. And as when I reintroduce myself, I'm reintroducing myself as a completely different person. I have different standards, I have different expectations, and I have different boundaries. It's so hard to reinvent ourselves because the people around us already know who we are.
Yeah. So you've had this humility and you've had a lot of think time to reflect and think about living a life with intentionality, which I think is pretty awesome. You already had this growth mindset. And again, I tell a lot of my clients to read Carol Dweck's book on mindset. It's a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I'll tell you what, just listening to you, it's verbatim. People that are highly competitive, they won't compete unless they know they're going to win. And that's a fixed mindset. You, on the other hand, you almost wouldn't compete unless you knew you were going to learn.
Yeah. And also I know I will lose in the beginning, but I will eventually win. You will you will not outwork me. Like if I see you in the park and we play a game and you just beat me in it and I've never seen the game before, good job, Stan. I'm going to go home, I'm going to YouTube it, and I'm going to spend the next 6 weeks dedicating my life to being better than you. And those 6 weeks, it's going to suck. And then I'm going to see you and we're going to casually play and I'm going to be so much better. And it's just going to seem like luck. I won't brag to you that I did it. I don't have to talk about what I did in the darkness. But it's like that time in the darkness is what allows us to be competitive when we do show up.
Yeah.
And I am overly competitive.
So let's talk a little bit about the boxing thing. So yeah, you did you slimmed up. You looked pretty in shape. I think when you dropped the 50 pounds, at least in the Netflix documentary Counterpunch. But that life came to an end. I mean, that boxing came to an end, and now you had to go to Plan B. And I think where I'm leading with this is because I think we kind of teased everybody at the start, at, the van down by the river, but. Tell us a little bit about, how you got into speaking. You're a full-time, keynote speaker now. You do a great job. Tell us a little bit about kind of that period of starting Plan B and getting into the next phase of your life.
Well, I understood well, first of all, plan B was always plan A. My goal was
You just had to beat up a lot of people to get to Plan B. Plan A.
so the goal in 2008 when I fought my first national championship, they give you this question questionnaire to fill out: height, weight, reach, hometown. Final question was, what do you want from boxing? And people put championship belt, money, cars. I put to be a good role model and have my own TV show. That was my goal in 2008. I didn't want to become a boxer. This is just something that was going to take me to the next level. 2012, when I got suspended, I realized like I wasn't doing any performing other than I would go to schools and talk. After I became the number one boxer in the country, I would go to middle schools and talk about bullying. And I wanted unconfident students to join local boxing gyms to become more confident, like, because it helped me. And I wanted to talk about the importance of bullying and confidence at schools. That's how I got involved into speaking. I didn't even know it was a career. This was just something I was doing because I was like, I'm number one boxer in the country. Kids would care about that. And if I could talk to me, that would change my life.
But you gotta tell the story. You gotta tell the story about having these gigs lined up, taken up in your Prius, and I'll let you take it from here.
Oh, yeah. So 2016, I qualified for the Olympic trials. Spoiler alert, if you watch the Netflix Counterpunch, documentary Counterpunch, I qualified for the Olympic trials, but I lose at international competition and I don't get to go to Rio. I lost on July 4th, 2016. I came back to the States and I decided I was going to go speak at schools full time. No one would kind of book me in my own city. And I realized that's a barrier for a lot of people. Because if you don't get support in your own city, I just think just leave. So I packed up in my Prius and I booked a bunch of schools around the country. And I was just going to drive in my Prius for 51 days and speak at a handful of schools. And 3 hours into it, I totaled my Prius. And I didn't have money for a rental. So like I accepted the deposits from a couple of schools. So it's not like I couldn't show up. So I rented a car for 1 day and I was like, you guys just aren't going to see this car for 50 more days. And I rented a car that was way too expensive, but it was all I could afford. And I didn't have a credit card at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. I dive into things and I just had to book more gigs while I was in my rental car. So I would stop off at like a McDonald's or something and use their Wi-Fi and try to book more gigs and gyms. And I was sleeping in my Prius. So I would shower at gyms, like Planet Fitness. And while I was on that trip, like scrambling, trying to book more gigs because I was falling forward because I was spending more money than I was making every single day. And I had 51 days to be out there. So I needed to hustle and figure some things out. What I learned is when you don't have a safety net, you're less willing to fall. If I had the money, I wouldn't have had to figure it out. Or if I had a backup plan, but if you have to figure it out, you always will. So if you're afraid to take the jump, you'll figure it out, jump. So somewhere along that trip, I ran into my friend Amy Mackey, the one who I originally lost the bet to in 2012, Bill and Amy. She made the joke down by the river. I looked it up and a light bulb went off my head. I was like, oh, if I lived in my van, I wouldn't have to pay for hotels, rentals, or flights. I used my insurance money from my Prius and I had no money left in my bank account. The guy I sold it to, Matt, I won't say his last name, but shout out to Matt. He sold me the van. He gave me the van, but he didn't give me the title. He let me drive off with it because I didn't have the rest of the money for it. Like when I say I was living it out of my van, I made it seem like a fun adventure.
Oh, yeah.
But bro, I had nowhere else to live. It was struggle city, but it was like, that's what I had to do. And it sucked like looking around at my boxing peers because the ones who were in the 2012 Olympics with me, the 2016 Olympics, they were doing pretty well in life. And I remember running into a boxer who was on the 2012 Olympic team, and he saw me in a parking lot, like living in my van. And I had this vision where I knew I could have just gotten the job and been a normal person, but I wanted to go this route. And I knew if I just built my career living in the van, speaking at schools all around the country, becoming a better speaker, if I have 100 boxing matches, I'm going to be a better boxer. If I have 100 speaking engagements, I'm going to be a better speaker. I just need to go put in the work. But it's just going to look awkward in that beginning phase. And he saw me living in my van in the parking lot of a gym, and he Venmoed me $100.
Oh,
And granted, I needed the $100, so I didn't say anything, but I felt so low at that moment. I was like,
yeah.
"This sucks." Like, I have to stick to the plan, but, like, at that moment, it's like I wanted to abort ship of that plan and, like, maybe get a job, or it was just, like, it kind of embarrassing.
So you didn't stay here for long because and you are you I think you're still maybe speaking to school age students, but you're on the circuit now. You're speaking at big venues, correct?
Yeah, yeah, so, I lived in my van for 3 years, and I spoke at about 200 schools a year, and that kinda it allowed me to become a better speaker. I'm sharper. While I was traveling around speaking at schools, I was also emceeing Veg Fest and doing comedy shows because my goal was to be a performer, and that's what I want to do. So I'm doing that with comedy, and speaking, and I yeah, I got my chops wet doing that, and I transitioned over to corporate during the pandemic, because schools were closed. And, although still passionate about speaking to students, my focus right now is primarily on a corporate audience.
Yeah. So, this podcast, the Inspiration Podcast is really it's about, finding where people have, hit some low spots in their life and, what they had to do from a mindset perspective to kind of, right the ship, pivot, whatever. It's also about well-being and about taking care of your body. I always believe that, you have to be a little selfish to be very selfless. You have to take care of yourself. Um, Talk to me just a little bit about the plant-based diet. Sounds like that's had a very, profound, mark on your life, and, sounds like you're very passionate. Can you just explain to the audience what a true diet looks for you that works?
So, beginning disclaimer, because food, also like religion, I don't care what you eat or what you do. I just share like what I do,
Mhm.
but what I have done has worked for me. I lost the bet and I did it for 28 days. I didn't know any vegans. I didn't know anything about it. It wasn't for animals. It was because after 28 days, I started to see abs. And I was like, oh, I haven't had abs in a long time. And it was completely for vanity reasons. And then I started emceeing these vegan festivals where I'd introduce doctors and I would just have to sit there for 45 minutes listening to a doctor speak. So I got an education on a lot of things about food labels and the FDA and things. And I learned what was in our food, and I went down a little rabbit hole, and decided I value longevity and I want to be healthy at 90. I want to have a good quality of life for my whole life. So I realize I have a not the greatest relationship with food. That's why, like during my suspension, I blew up. I Food's my comfort. I love eating when I'm happy. I love eating when I'm sad. I eat when I'm bored. My favorite thing to do is eat a lot until like I fall asleep and then wake up and eat the rest of the food at room temperature. Uh, that is a good time for me, Stan. But we can't do that if we want to get on stages and talk about being a disciplined athlete. So I've since had to recheck myself because in life, I'm running a business, I'm doing a lot of traveling, and I'm eating like I'm an athlete, but I'm not doing what an athlete does.
Eh,
And Stan, the math's not mathing. So had to make some changes, take some accountabilities, and reset what I'm doing, which is weird because it's like our habits are so habitual that we don't think about it.
yeah.
How do we change what we're doing? First, we have to be aware of it, and then set things in place to hold yourself accountable. I do it by making things public, and I kind of pride myself on if I said I'm going to do something, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's take a little detour here. One of the things that I'm so excited about is you do this stand-up comedy thing, and you do it. at apartment complexes on the weekend. To tell us about and you're from Austin, by the way, so just to let our listeners know, but tell us a little bit about the comedy thing.
Yeah, comedy in the courtyard. It was an idea I put together to with the mission. So, comedy in the courtyard. The mission is to bring communities together through laughs and smiles in the comfort of their own home. So, I bring the sound system and a few comedians, and we show up to an apartment complex, a clubhouse or courtyard, and we do a clean stand-up comedy show. That's like not awkward. You can bring your kids, your family, and there's no weird moments.
So how hard is it to find a lot of, good clean material for, bringing people in and which I think is awesome because I think that's some of the best written material is when it's clean because then it has to be even more creative.
Yeah, it's so much easier to not be clean. And like legit, I wasn't a clean comic because it's easy. Not that it was easier for me to just use a curse word here or there. But when I realized I wanted more stage time and I could complain people aren't putting me on shows, or I could just put on my own shows. And I realized the most efficient way to do that, because if I do it with apartment complexes, and I make it super easy for leasing agents to where the leasing agent has nothing to do but set the date. I bring the comics, I bring the laughs, I bring the sound system, I set up the chairs that they have, and they just post it in their elevator. I create a promotional PDF and I send them beforehand to let their residents know. And I figure if I put all that together, I have a built-in audience. I don't have to stand on the street barking and trying to get people into clubs, which I've done before. Not not a great payoff. But what I would have to do that is pivot. I now have to write clean material. I now have to pivot. Now, it's not exactly what I want to do, but I see myself doing this enough in the Austin area. I want this to get big, and I do this every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night around Austin at different apartment complexes. And I can do the same apartment complex month after month because I just bring three different clean comics every time. Uh, then I will be big enough to start being booked in clubs around the country. So this is my way to get into the comedy community while bringing clean laughs to people in their own homes.
Yeah. Well, my guess is you bring some humor and energy to the stage in your current motivational speech. So I'm sure you've got a little bit of comedy going on. What's your go-to? What's your best bit? What's the one that you say, you know what, I need a laugh here out of the crowd? What's the one you move to?
Oh, you got to read the room. You got to read the room, and I think that's important. I think I am most funny because I have my predetermined speech and I know what I'm going to say, but I always leave about 7 to 9 minutes of empty space, and I call it floating. That's when I'm completely in the moment. I'm present. I'll talk to the audience and I'll ask questions. And if something comes up, I riff off of that. And I realize in those moments, I get so many nuggets for future content in my speech because I'm actually present. And I'm so comfortable with the other 53 minutes that if this 7 minutes doesn't go well, it's still an A plus performance. So I don't necessarily have a joke, but being in the moment and being present allows you to bring a humor that AI can't do yet.
Cool, cool. And, well, I'll tell you what, we'll wind it down here a little bit, but, tell me, is there something you're still working on? Is there a limiting belief? Is there you recreated yourself so many times, and now you're KMF awesome, and again, you're doing a great job. You've got a book, you're an author, you're a keynote speaker, you're booked throughout the year. Is there any limiting belief, some recreation you're trying to deal with currently?
Yes, and it's a weird one because I set a financial goal for myself a very, very long time ago. And the financial goal was what I was going to do over the course of my 40th birthday. And I put so much on this financial goal that I was going to do it at 40. But then I realized, I feel like I put a limit on myself. Like, oh, I could have gotten this before 40. Because I'm on my way to do it. Trajectory wise, I'm on my way there. But did I shoot myself in the foot? Because I could have taken 7 years off of this and probably reached the same goal if I would have set it shorter. And now I'm trying to tell myself I can reach that goal before 40 and still do it at 40. I'm battling with that because I set a ceiling on myself almost, I feel like. Subconsciously, I'm not gonna hit that goal until 40, and I believe I can hit it before 40. And, I think something just as subtle as putting a belief on yourself or setting a date, I even think I might self-sabotage myself, on to make sure I don't get it by 40, and I don't mean that I would wanna do that. Another thing, self-sabotage that I'm working on. Okay, I know I took my own path in life. I'm a strategic nonconformist. I do things my own way. I box my own way. It wasn't always the accepted way, but I did it my own way. And I got to this point in life doing it my own way. But now I'm battling with the fact that, is this as far as my way can take me? And what would it be like to evolve or do it someone else's way? Because even leaving the F in my name could be looked at a form of self-sabotage because I'm losing opportunities just because I'm staying firm in that. Now that I'm more in a corporate space, I am expected to wear a blazer on stage. And I'm like, when I created the Cam character, I never put in characteristics that he would do after sports because I never thought that forward. I was 23 when I came up with this. I didn't have this plan of, oh, after sports, I'll be this person. I'll wear this, I'll wear that. And now I feel almost disingenuous wearing a blazer on stage because Cam F also wouldn't wear a blazer. Would he?
No. No, I don't think so.
So if you're booking Cam F also, because you want me who I am, if I showed up dressed like you, why even bring me in? But is that limiting me? Is that limiting stages I can get on in the future?
So I'm hearing you say, do I be true to myself or do I accept some level of conformity in order to continue to do well, reach my goal, please others? And so you're kind of at this crossroads, I think, of making this decision. And one of the things, even earlier before we got on and started recording today, I just said, "How are you doing?" You said, I'm really at this crossroads. I'm trying to come at things from a place of passion. So I don't know if that is in relationship to the conversation we're having now, but is there a linkage there between this conformity and coming from a place of passion?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what, because I put a lot on this financial goal and it shaped a lot of things I do. And even the reason of me, because in 2012, when I was broke, I could have just turned pro and signed a pretty good contract and been financially successful. But I wanted to bet on myself because I realized after 35, as an athlete, it gets increasingly difficult to stay at the top level. If I went with speaking, the older I get, the more grades I have, the more my words are worth. So it would be a longer route. But I put that financial goal of that financial goal on myself, and it's like if I want to hit that goal, I have to conform. And I can't. The thing is, Stan, I can't conform. I could just wear the blazer and do the steps and get all the things that I want to do. But I didn't come this far to just be normal now. But that could be self-sabotage. And I'm like, I might just have to accept that.
Well, you get some, you don't want to go back to Cameron. We know that. And, your KMF awesome to me. I don't know, I'd probably use it's one of those things that, when I coach, client has to client has to come to their grips with, their own conclusion. But, to me, I get you gotta look at it, but you're KMF awesome. I mean, you've got the resume and you've got the stories, you've got the growth mindset. I mean, they're purchasing you. So it'll be interesting to see which way you go on this, my friend. I know I'm kind of running close to out of time, but one of the questions I do always like to ask is, what's your magic trick, Cam? What is it that you do that is so effortless? It's just a magic trick. I mean, people look at Cam and they say, "How does he do that?" And you look at it and you say, "Doesn't everybody do this?" But no, they don't. It's your magic trick. What's your magic trick, my friend?
I've got two top ones, but I'll give you one. It was when I found out so I was like 8 years old. My mom went into to put money for gas back in the day when people used to do that. And I was sitting in the front seat of the car, and there's a bird that landed on a fence. And I was just an 8-year-old, and I said, if this bird poops right now, I have magic powers. And then the bird pooped. And Sam, when I tell you I was so excited in this car, and then when my mom came back into the car, I didn't tell her because everyone knows the first rule of having superpowers is you just don't tell everyone. So I kept it as my secret. And the first 20 minutes of the movie is the guy trying to figure out how to use his powers. So I was trying to figure out how to use these powers, and I landed on what it was. I get one small wish a day. It can't be something too big that will ripple the universe, but I have one wish a day. And like if I didn't study for a test, my wish would be, I wish I got a 77. Now I'm not going to wish for 100 because that's not realistic and that would mess with the fabric of the universe. But I can get away with a 77. It's not going to change anything.
Right?
And I did this for years. And when I started boxing, if I had a boxing match on Saturday, I wouldn't make a wish for a few days because I would be saving up my wishes. I thought if I had a wish and you had a wish, Stan, and they counter enacted,
Sure.
whoever's wish was stronger would get it. And if I saved up a couple days and it was against your 1 day wish, I would get my wish. That was my logic. And because of that, I always expected things to work out in my favor. And it gave me this air of optimism that allowed me to go a little bit longer without quitting. And really, if you can fail without being discouraged, success becomes inevitable.
Oh man, that's a mic drop right there. As we finish up today, Kim, I've asked you before, how can I help you? And one of the things you told me is that you're trying to help others. You're trying to help other athletes, especially that that need a plan B and that haven't really thought far ahead. But maybe how can either I or the audience help you at this point?
Of course, I would always love to speak. I'm a speaker, but in the way of helping athletes, what I realized was I joined boxing to get out of my situation. The shirts we wore at the gym was a PAL shirt, Police Athletic League. It said keeping kids out of prison and in playgrounds. And boxing was supposed to get me out the hood. They never said how. Sports are supposed to help. It's supposed to be an avenue to get you places. And they give the youth sports, but they don't give them a game plan on how to leverage that to build a future for themselves. Because you learn so many great qualities in sports, no matter what the sport is. It's the idea of discipline, it's teamwork, it's learning how to lose, it's learning to remember your equipment. And those skills transfer to so many things in life. But I think athletes need a bridge to connect them from their sport to where they're going in life after their sport. And it's no shame that your sport is over. Enjoy the ride for as long as it was, but it's going to be over sometime. And I want to help those athletes transition.
That's fantastic. So how do people get in touch with you, Cam?
You can find me at camfawesome.com or at camfawesome on all social media platforms because I'm not famous enough for anyone to steal my name.
Well, Cam, I try to take these things about 40 or 50 minutes. I think we went up close to an hour. So I'm not even going to apologize to my listeners because it's been just so much phenomenal, just convo and nuggets to take from you. You're the epitome of a growth mindset, my friend. Is there anything you want to leave us with before I close it out?
Yeah, you get to create your own story. And when I moved from New York to Florida, I just pretended to be someone I wanted to be. And you don't have to be stuck in that same role, that script. And if it's too difficult for you to become a new person, change the people you're around. Like, just stop hanging out with everybody. Just pick new people. You could still love the old people and still see them occasionally, but just start a whole new life. Yeah. But if you my advice isn't for everyone though.
I think it is. I would disagree. And I think it is. But I tell you what, thank you, Cam. I tell you what, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining me on, this wonderful journey that I've had with Cam today in season 2. I hope you've taken a nugget or two for today's discussion. If you want to connect with me on social media or even on my website is stangibsonspeaks.com, stangibsonspeaks.com. And if you want to just DM me, it's stan@stangibsonspeaks.com. Hey, thank you, everybody. I just really appreciate you helping launch us to the top of the Apple charts so early in this podcast journey of mine. Oh, thank you. May you all live a rich and intentional life. Take care and have a wonderful week. Goodbye. Hey, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining today's episode of the Inspiration Podcast with Stan. What'd you think? Just this interview with Cam, Cam F. Awesome. Just how he developed his alter ego from some challenges that he had growing up to becoming one of the top boxers in the world, quite honestly, at the heavyweight level. And I've had a lot of conversations even before and after this episode with Cam, and he's truly an awesome guy. And he fits right in with several of the initiatives that we're working on, at stangibsonspeaks.com, and it really centers around the Leadership Lab and the Resilience Leadership Lab. And what I have is there are two different initiatives. One is a set of 10 leadership modules that we offer up to organizations, and we offer up to either in packets of 1, 3, 5, however you want to customize them, but they're all around self-awareness. They're all around well-being. They're all around productivity and initiatives. But with Cam specifically, that's really around that self-awareness. How do you set up alter egos? How do you set up identity transformation where it develops you to show up as a stronger, better, more efficient, effective leader in the future? So we've got these list of modules that we use for helping organizations, but I've also got the Resilience Lab Mastermind. And that's where we have 10 to 15 different emerging leaders and also seasoned leaders that show up. Because I believe that in today's world, these relationships, that there needs to be this psychological safety and this safe place where leaders can show up and work on these same initiatives of how to show up better. And so having the alter ego, having this ability to have greater self-awareness is something that we talk about within the Resilience Lab and this mastermind. If you've got interest in knowing about either of these in more detail, again, reach out to me, stan@stangibsonspeaks.com, stan@stangibsonspeaks.com. And I'd love to talk to you more about it. Just see if it's a fit. And, if not, then we can at least have a great conversation around it. So, hey, please keep tuning in to the Inspiration Podcast with Stan. We have a lot of fun, and I think we kind of dig deep, and I just enjoy it and hope you do too. So anyway, take care. May you all live a rich and intentional life. Take care and have a great week. Well, that's it for today, my friends. I hope this conversation sparked something meaningful for you. If it did, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration too. You can find more tools, stories, and coaching to support your journey at stangibsonspeaks.com.